I appreciate the Baltic Forum sponsors as well. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And I'm also very happy that I'm following Suzanne, because Suzanne provides, I think, a perspective of American views that aren't often heard. But there are many voices back in the States that also believe in the kinds of issues and talking about what Russia is today. My comments today are designed to provide you with some insight into the foreign policy of a new president. You may have heard recently that there is a presidential election in our country, and it'll be decided in about 2 weeks. And while nothing is ever certain, the polling and the trends look very positive. So what I thought I'd do is talk about what a Democratic president foreign policy might look like. And while it's not official Clinton policy, it is the belief in the Democratic circles. So as I said, I'm not speaking for the secretary, but I am talking about, I think, what someone talked about as that experienced woman's view. So I think there's going to be a couple of things that you're going to see. First, there will be more or less continuity with the policies of the Obama administration, with a couple different changes. Two, there'll be significant changes in the team. When a new administration comes in, there are over 4,000 political appointees that will change out at the tops of all the cabinets and all the agencies. Now, typically this is much more radical. The last time we went from 2 terms of a candidate to the third was when Reagan and Bush served. So having 2 terms of Obama and then another term of President or Secretary Clinton, you'll see people changed out more slowly because the policies will have some continuity. But you'll still see major changes at the top. The first day the president is sworn in, he or she literally asks everybody to resign. And then they get to choose who they keep. So it's a rolling sort of job market. The third issue is that the higher level cabinet appointees have to be confirmed by the Senate. So in the election, it'll be very important to see if the Democrats take back the Senate. And again, it's trending that way, but that will really set the agenda for how the executive and the legislative branches work. I've had the pleasure and the honor of working with the Secretary going back to her time as both First Lady when she was Senator and Foreign Minister. And I think the good news is that she truly has an affinity for Europe and the transatlantic agenda. And she, probably more than any other candidate we've ever elected, will have the most experience. I think she also probably has the most relationships after having served in all those posts, and as somebody who believes in dialogue and working with people, I think she's going to really be able to build on all of those relationships. And most importantly, I think she is of the mindset, and the Democratic Party is that when Europe and the US can agree and our transatlantic partners, we can solve most of our problems. So that's sort of the framework. On policy, I'm optimistic, and I'm even more optimistic, frankly, because this organization works and all of you are here. I think Secretary Clinton has been a long advocate of smart power and an approach to foreign policy that likes to combine civil society, traditional diplomacy, but choosing the right combination of tools. It's diplomatic, it's economic, military, political, legal, cultural, and she's going to determine it for each situation. While she's cautious, I think, and the party is cautious about remaking other societies, I think global challenges today have demanded that we need to have leadership in the US, we need to have engagement, and not to be isolationist. It goes back to the word that I think has been used a lot today, trust building. I think you're also going to see a more activist, more proactive, what we call in the United States a muscular internationalist and interventionist, far more, say, than President Obama's doctrine of restraint, as the president came into office not having had really any transatlantic affinity. And this is exactly the opposite of what we have with Secretary Clinton. I think she's also going to be a strong multilateralist. She'll work to develop on the relationships she's had with the leaders, and I think she's going to be better friends to our allies, but potentially tougher on our adversaries and our potential rivals. As it relates to Russia, I think the key here is to identify our shared interests in the U.S.-Russia relationship and in those places that we can cooperate. Areas that come to mind include preventing the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, and at the same time, a smart approach to Russia's challenges to European security and democratic alliances. I think we should be enhancing the forums where the U.S. and the West can participate with Russia, such as OSCE and the NATO-Russia Council, in the hopes that we can decrease the tensions and maybe open additional lines of cooperative communication. Through the OSCE, I think the U.S. will try to relaunch talks with Moscow on its place within the European security architecture, thereby enabling Russia's legitimate security interests in the region to be heard and discussed. There's also an opportunity to discuss regional challenges and the broader relationship between Russia, Europe, and the U.S. to ensure favorable influence. At the same time, there continues to be a strong concern in our country regarding Russia's violation of the 1987 Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty and moving forward with a program to produce a ground-launched cruise missile. On NATO, NATO continues to be vital, we believe, not only to U.S. interests in Europe, but also to European interests around. We want to strengthen the alliance, and we want to maintain the Article 5 commitments, get NATO back to be working for the common defense, and encourage our allies to provide a greater share of their own security burden. And it's an important part. I think we want to work to enhance the NATO-Russia Council. We want to support the European Reassurance Initiative. As you probably know, the budget was recently quadrupled by President Obama to increase NATO's capability, readiness, and responsiveness. And we want to strengthen U.S. reassurance and NATO's resilience and deterrence capability. We also want to strengthen the energy security of the European states, licensing and approving new LNG export capacity, support countries dependent on Russia, and focus on climate change, which was also addressed here, adaptation, mitigation, and holding national governments accountable for emissions reductions. And we also are committed to keeping NATO membership open and expanded, whether it's Ukraine, Georgia, Macedonia, Montenegro, Finland, and Sweden. And we want to have joint partnerships on key issues such as cyber terrorism, nuclear proliferation, climate change, and piracy. And here I would like to quote the Secretary because this is her belief on NATO. She was recently questioned of its importance given some of the dialogue in the presidential debate, and she said, NATO is one of the best investments America has ever made, from the Balkans to Afghanistan and beyond. NATO allies have fought alongside the United States, sharing the burdens and the sacrifices. As it relates to EU and NATO cooperation, I think supporting the 2016 Warsaw Summit Joint Declaration will be very important, and the development of complementary and interoperable defense capabilities, operational coordination on exercises including at sea and on migration, and increased intelligence sharing with our respective staffs. On EU, in light of Brexit, migrants, and recent challenges, we want to be there to help Europe formulate a new vision that can in turn create a new Europe, and to support efforts by EU member states to engage their citizens on their political and economic goals and priorities. We want to champion Europe as an important partner and cornerstone of our global security, and working with the EU to address economic and social challenges. And we want to emphasize our joint partnerships to achieve these goals, and we want to call on the EU unity on Russian sanctions to work together to reevaluate the expiring sanctions regime. We want to strengthen our strategic partnership with Turkey while pushing for reform. And at the same time, it looks like we might have some success in ending the division in Cyprus. On the Baltics, we want to support our Baltic allies in the context of the NATO commitments And we want to support the region's economic development and encourage foreign investment while supporting the need for transparent governance structures and the respect for a rule of law. On Ukraine, there's a lot of talk about it today. We want to work with Ukraine to create a successful and prosperous democratic state that's capable of choosing its own foreign policy course. We want to help Ukraine transition away from a frozen conflict, and we want to ensure the continuation of strong support from the West. The support will include not only financial but technical assistance as Ukraine tries to enact more political and economic reform and to institute anti-corruption measures. And we want to expand support for Ukraine's defensive needs so that Ukraine can defend itself. We hope that other countries will also support us. So thank you.